Hey, how's it all going out there in YouTube land? And yeah, what are we talking about today? Well, just a bit of a digression there. Yeah, I haven't put anything online for a while because had a few problems with the camera. Yeah, stopped working. So what I've done is gone and bought another one, bought an old dinosaur, a relic from the past. But yeah, we'll make do with what we got and we'll see how we go with this. So yeah, today's subject, what am I talking about? As the title suggests, to jig or not to jig when you're bevel grinding. And what I'm going to do is give you some of my opinions over the last couple of years of what I've learnt and what I've done, and yeah, this here being a jig that I made. Is it worth making it? Is it worth doing it for grinding bevels? Made a little clamp for it, if you can see that in the video, and got another jig here I've made. So yeah, what I'll try and do is give my humble opinion, and bear in mind it's only my humble opinion and what I think, and yeah, should you use a jig or should you freehand grind? So without much more jibber jabber, that's my little intro done, and we'll get stuck into it, and yeah, let's go. So my guess is, if you're watching this video, you're probably new to knife making and you're sort of wondering what your options are. So do you need a lot of gear to put a bevel on a knife? Well, not really, no. You can use one of these, as you know, use a dirty old file, which I've never done, but you can do it, and you see heaps of videos online about doing that. Or you can use this dirty old 5-inch grinder, which I have done, this here being an example. And I don't know if you'll focus on that, but that one there is completely done on a 5-inch grinder. A little bit on a linishing belt, but not much. Because you get these, it would have been done with one of these old stones, if you see that there. Nowadays you can get these flapper wheels and all the rest. And you can also get these, whatever they're called, Best Touch. Yeah, they do a really good job. So none of that was done with a jig. I'll do some close-ups on these knives, so you can see what's sort of happening here. This old beastie here, which was done on the old Abbott and Ashby, if you've got a video on that, but yeah, you can see that. So no jigs used on that at all. Yeah, so you can do it with very little. You've got to weigh up what you're actually doing. If you want to make 10 knives a day and you want them all perfect, exactly the same, then yeah, you're probably looking at jigging it up. If you just want to make one knife to do it, then yeah, you don't need jigs, don't need much at all. But I'll go through what I do and how I do it, like I've said. And then you've got this one here, the old kitchen knife, which was done on a jig and then refined later because it didn't cut so well. But I'll talk about that when we get up to jigs, and I'll show you some close-ups of the knives and the sort of results that I'm getting with them. So when I started making knives in my little garage here, this here Abbott and Ashby linishing machine is all I had to work with in a 5-inch grinder, so I thought I'd give it a go and start on these. So this little beastie here is one that I made, a little one, and the one that I just showed you before, this one here, with just a piece of leaf spring really that's cut down. These ones here, this design here, I still make these, and I still make them on this here. Is it ideal? No, not really, but it works. It's just to keep the heritage of it and how I used to do it. Of course, it wouldn't have a handle on it, but you've got it down there like that. The problem with this is it's only a 3-inch contact wheel. It's not too bad for doing hollow grinds if you can hold it like that, but you can do it. So it's all done freehand on this. It's got a little bit of a platen thing up here, but yeah, it doesn't work too well, but yeah, no, it's all good. So that's just a little bit of an overview of that design and how I make it. So I put that on there, go up and down basically, and get my bevel on it. Naturally you have marks, but it works pretty good, so that's what I use on those. So that's another option, just going through my process. And yeah, so now we'll move over and have a look at something else. So for the purposes of my progression, for lack of a better way of putting it, I moved on from the old Abbott and Ashby and thought, yeah, well, I'm going to need something a bit better than that. I don't really, but yeah, you know what I mean. So I made myself a 2x72 grinder and then started to do some bevels on that. Just yeah, a bit of a learning curve. So the first knives I started to make on there were these 4-inch bushcrafts, this here being one, and that's the earlier first one I made, that one there, and this is a later one. So for this one here, you can see that's a little bit different, but that's completely done on a jig, the jig that I've got, that I made. So I ended up coming up with this jig here, if you can see that in the video clear enough. So it's not too rare, it's a bit elaborate, it's not a simple construction, it's just flat bar, hinged in the middle, 2 bolts and that sort of thing on there, and handles to go back and forwards, which we'll look at. So if that comes out, you can adjust it here, if I can, like that, and adjust your angle with that to get your angle. And what I'll do is put a protractor down there, or a square or whatever, and measure off to get what I want on that. So yeah, not a bad little thing, and that's how I use it. So this here being a half finished bushcraft, goes on those 2 little screws on the bottom there. Get your angle right, you've got a variety of holes in there to do it. And I made up this little clamp thing as well, just clamps that on there, if I can get it right. Get there. If I can get it, there we go. That just clamps on there, goes back and forth on your work table, which I'll show you in a minute. And so that works pretty well for doing those. And that's what I came up with for that, so that's all good. You don't have to be as elaborate with this, and yeah, you don't have to go quite that much. You can go quite a lot simpler, and yeah, we might take a little bit of a sidetrack now, and I'll go and make a little jig. And just show you how easy it is to make a jig. So for the purpose of the video, I'm just going to make up another little jig out of this angle iron, just so you can see how easy it is to actually make a jig, if jigging's the way you want to go, to be fair. So then I'll just go over the jigs I've got, the benefits and what I don't like about them, and so forth and so on. So yeah, let's do it. So what you've probably just seen a bit fast forwarded is yeah, how simple and easy it is to actually make a jig like this. Just a bit of stainless steel angle iron, drilled 4 holes in it, 2 there, 2 in the back. Take some 6mm bolts with nuts on, screw them into there. So if jigs you have flavour and that's the way you want to go, then yeah, it's easy enough to do. You could use mild steel angle iron, stainless is all I had. So those screws will go in there like that, you adjust them there to get your angle, so easy enough with that. Take that off there. And then again, you could put those holes wherever you like, I just randomly put them on there. These come out naturally, go into here, if they do, yep. Like I said, you could make this out of aluminium, you could use mild steel flat bar. I've seen people online use wood with screws on the back. That screw down there is just simply to hold that, stop that slipping down, and on the back again you use your little clamp. Hopefully you can see that clearly. and again you're good to go. No worries at all with that. Yeah, that's a simple and easy jig. Slides on your tool rest, your table, whatever. I'll get that right, and away you go. What I found in my experience is, yeah, it's good for the little bushcrafts. I can get pretty good grinds all the time, but then I started to make some of these. Started to make some little steak knives, and you can see they're really, really thin. They're really thin there, so when I'm putting on here, put it on the jig, where do I put it to get it right? And yeah, it starts eating away the jig. I can't get it high enough in the middle, can't get it high enough to actually get out of the way. So that's one reason why I tend to go to freehand grinding nowadays. The other thing you will note too, bigger knives, of course it wouldn't have a handle on it, but bigger knives are starting to get a bit out of, you could make another jig I guess, but yeah, not ideal for that either in my opinion. Again, you can go to the extreme in the old cleaver. So yeah, it's getting a little bit big for the little wee jig. So the other thing that I make a few of are these carving knives. This is actually the wife's go-to knife for some reason, but yeah, it is. And again, they're getting thin, they're getting small and long and so forth. So the jig does have its limitations. Brilliant for the little 4-inch bushcraft, but yeah, there we go. So that's the jig. So what we'll do now, we'll go over the 2x72 and we'll have a little bit of a look at the function and how they operate. And we'll have a look at the other jig I made for the cleavers and so forth. So there we have the jig sitting on the table as it is, like there. So we put it into there and we run back and forwards. Yeah, simple as that really. It seems simple, but it, yeah, not necessarily is. But, and it works really good. Benefits of it are you can tend to get most of your bevel grinds the same and get them looking really good both sides and all the rest of it. Downfalls of it are is no matter what I try and do to this table, it seems to get quite sticky. I've greased it up, but then the dust will get stuck to it. I've siliconed it, done all sorts of things. Tends to get a little bit sticky, but yeah, there you go. I did have a longer work table for another one I had which worked a little bit better, but yeah, that's one downfall of that. With a little bit of practice you can get things quite good. What you do need to be careful of with any of your grinding is that you hit the belt flat, like so. You don't want to be at an angle when you hit it. You have to be really careful with that. To the tips, you tend to sometimes have to pull it around like that and just be a little careful with that. That's another thing you need to be aware of, but again, and I'll probably say it over and over and over, you've got to be flat to the belt when you're bevel grinding. Just take care with that and practice makes perfect. So that's that thing there. Another downfall of it is that nowadays I used to grind my bevels in the annealed state or normalised state when it was a bit softer. Nowadays I do it in a hardened, like this one here is hardened and tempered. Being in here like this, I can't tell how hot it's really getting. What you tend to do is grind, dip it in water. So with a whole thing like this, I've got to dip the whole jig in there to cool it off, which isn't ideal due to the fact that everything will rust and get, yeah, not things. So that's another downfall of this type of method of grinding. So just things to be aware of, yeah. So that's that. So for smaller knives like that, works really good. For the bigger knives, like I said, yeah, not so good. So what we'll do now, any questions of course you got or anything else you want to know, just let me know in the comments and I'll try and cover that. But from there, this jig, yeah, works good. Use it now and again, not so much now, but I'll explain that later. So I moved on from there and made another jig which I'll go over now. So one thing I didn't mention with the jigs like that is they're really only good for flat grinds. That's all you're going to get out of it in my opinion. Flat grind is all you're going to get. If you want something different, then you're going to have to go back to freehand in my opinion. You can put the jig on there with a 8-inch contact wheel and get a bit of a hollow grind. So, but yeah, it's still limited in my opinion. Again, it's only my opinions, but yeah. So for the bigger blades, I went to this thing here. You've probably seen some online. Other people have them. So it's just a swing arm. It's got a, if you can see that, folded piece of sheet metal in there. So the blade hooks on there. it'd get it further in naturally because it wouldn't have a handle, but you get the essence in there and your bearing goes on there and you just pull that across like so, and it works pretty good. Again, flat grinds for what it does, and it works pretty good on those bigger blades. What I will say is it has to be fairly flat on this end, or you tend to get a few issues with that. If you take, for example, and I can't find it, here we are. Take, for example, this old here shark slayer and put that on there. Of course the bearing will be further down, and I'm coming out to here and it's going off the thing, so it's not quite catching that. And this one here too, I'd be grinding at that angle there, so it's, yeah, not ideal for that. So for that type of knife, it doesn't really work. When you're getting into your smaller stuff, like again, we'll go back to a half finished steak knife, getting that bearing down there, and again, it's it'll work. You could get it going, I guess, but yeah, it's not the best for it. I could make more adjustments to it, but yeah, it's not really worth it, in my opinion. But it's not a bad little machine for what it is and what I do with it. It works pretty good. This one here, it's got a curve on the end, if you can see that. It would still be up like that and you'd get it, but again, if you look down there, you can't quite get that tip. The tip's gone into the sheet metal, so you'd be having to do this all the time. So those are the drawbacks of that little one there. I'll just grab my barbecue knife, run out of space. This little barbecue knife is ideal. Get that in the right place, and yeah, it works good. That sort of thing works good. You can take it straight out of there, dip it in the water. Of course, I made this adjustable. You just take off the butterfly nut. If it'll come off. It's been a while since I used it. And that's gone down the bucket. Picture. Flips over there. And these nuts on the bottom here are adjustable. You can lift that up and down. It's a bit rusty actually, but never mind. And that'll lift up and down, and so you go back the other way. So yeah, that's that. So now I have to get in my dust bucket and retrieve that butterfly nut, but there you go. That happens. So those are the two main jigs that I'll use if I use a jig. So that being said, it's time to move on, and we'll talk about the freehand grinding and what I've found with that. So now we have a little jibber about the old freehand grinding, and to be fair, freehand grinding is pretty much where I've come to nowadays. 99% of the blades I make will be freehand ground, and the reasons for that is, or I should talk properly, the reason for that is I just find I get better control. Well, you will note if you're looking down there at the little thing there, I do have a little wee cut down work rest here. Mainly for just resting the hands, because when you hit the blade, the belt, I mean, it can pull it down and so with that. So all I'm going to be doing is resting my hands on here, like so, and just pulling that across like so. When I get to the tip, if I need more out of the tip, I can roll that around like that. You still need to keep it flat. What you don't want to be doing is hitting it like that, or you'll get big grooves down there which are really hard to take out. What you can do is take off the edge there, which is what I normally do. Take that off there, like so, and then I'll work it. I'll work it down like so. Work down what I want to do. If I get any imperfections, I can work on that area there. If I've got more further down, I can give my thumb down there and push. Still keeping it flat, keep that foot on there like so. You can use a push stick. This here being a pretty rude and ready push stick. Again, I can rest and do that. So personally for me, I prefer the freehand grinding for those reasons, exactly that. I do wear gloves, a lot of people don't, but I always have for the last 40 years of engineering. But I can feel the heat in that. I can feel the heat, I can take it straight off there and dip it. I'm not going to overheat it. You don't want to overheat it. If that changes colour, then you've got a few issues. I can feel the heat, and I can also get, if I need more up on the top here, like I said, I can push with my thumb there and just pull that back like so, or whatever I need to do. So that's what I prefer to do nowadays, just to get those imperfections out. I find with the freehand grinding I get a lot more control, and I can get the material to come off where I want it to come off. Another point that I will note with freehand grinding is if you don't have a VFD and you can't slow down your belt, then you don't have the option, but if you do, it's definitely a better way to go in my opinion. So we'll just have a look at the VFD. So I've got no idea if you can see that clearly in the video, but there we are, there it is. So in my opinion, if you can slow down your belt, it gives you much more control of what metal you're taking off, and it won't overheat your blades as quickly as it will. This VFD is on there, Ford 65. No idea how that relates to RPMs or whatever it is, but what I'll tend to do is I'll go down to approximately, try and get it around 45, I think I do, somewhere around there, and that's what I'll turn it down to. I've found for me that is gets the best results, so that's what I do. So that is one point that I will say is, yeah, turn it down if you can. If you can't, well you can't, you're just going to make do. But yeah, so that's what I'll do. That's one major point. So now we'll do a few close-ups of what sort of results I'm getting out of that. So this one here, as we mentioned, first bushcraft I made, all done on the first jig you saw. Everything done on that. So, and that's come up pretty good, pretty happy with that. Been a good knife. This one here is a later bushcraft, probably the last one I made to be fair, all freehand ground, which is the way I tend to go now, so that's all pretty good. The old barbecue knife, if we can fit that in the picture, there we go. That one there's all done on the second jig, all done there, and again just a flat grind, simple as that, that's all it was. So that's my barbecue knife. Cleaver, doesn't need much more, it's only got a grind, if you can see that. That's colour's not too great, but yeah, mainly just got a bevel on here. It's mainly made for chopping, as you know, which is a cleaver, so that's done on the second jig as well. So that's that one pretty good. Then we move on to the old kitchen knife. She's got a bit of a patina on her, to be fair, because she gets a lot of use, but that one there, like I say, probably haven't said yet, but there's a lot more to bevels than meets the eye. That one there was done on the jig, got a flat grind on it. Luckily I had left enough meat because it was just a prototype type thing. Didn't cut too well, so I took it back to the carpet platen and put a convex grind on it. So that's a combination of using a jig and freehanding. So yeah, same thing with the carving knife. Again, did it on the jig. It was a bit of a stretch for the old jig, to be fair, all that. And again, brought it back and refined it on the carpet platen on the 2x72, and it cut really good. So those are those ones there. And then that brings us to the other ones, which are all freehand. Steak knife, all freehand ground. No jigs used there at all. And my other kitchen knife here. This kitchen knife here, if we can see it close enough in the footage. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not, but just down here, this one was ground in a softer state, and then it was hardened and tempered, and you can see down there where it's sharpened, I've got a bit of distortion along this bottom part here, which is why now I grind them in a hardened and tempered state. Just there is bent a bit. Still works, still worked great, use a little time, but just not ideal if you're looking at it. Another little one I got, this is a boning knife or fish filleting knife. Not that it's been much of a fishing season because I haven't caught many fish, but never mind, that's another story. So again, that's all freehand ground. And finally the old bit of a hunting knife here. Again, all freehand ground, because I don't know if this light's the best, but it's got a bevel on here plus something on the top here as well. So all that was freehand. That one there, I should have had some footage of it. That came off the 2x72 in a complete mess. Would have taken me probably in excess of 9 or 10 hours of hand sanding to get it to where you see it now. But anyway, that's another story for another day. So yeah, so that's that. So having said that, we'll bring it to a close. I'll do a bit of an outro and probably finally answer the question, do you need to jig or don't you need to jig? To jig or not to jig was the question, I think. So yeah, let's do an outro and call it a day. So to jig or not to jig, I think that was the question. So yeah, where are we at? Where have we come to? So I think before you, if you're new to knife making, you need to ask yourself, why are you going to use a jig? Why wouldn't you just freehand grind? And if you're like me and you think it's going to be the silver bullet and the answer to it all, to get perfect grinds, then you're probably going to be wrong. Do you get nice grinds on a jig? Yeah, definitely do. And but you can get them freehand. It's all down to practice, practice and more practice. My opinion, my humble opinion as it is, I would take the time and learn to freehand grind, and probably what I should have done is done that first and then gone back to the jig. What I will say is, with all your grinding on your bevels, is you need to know what you're looking for. Do your research, look online and have a look. You need to be able to see, you'll make mistakes, we all make mistakes and you get things wrong and things like that, but you need to be able to identify your problems and know how to fix them. If you've had much experience in the welding industry, there's plenty of people who will come along and tell you, yeah, that's an average weld. You know that because you did it. And there's not many people who will come along and say, yeah, that weld there and this is how you fix it. So find out what you're aiming for and go for there. If you're doing a little 4-inch bushcraft, like that one there as we discussed, yeah, it's good. It's good to put them on jigs, and I still do that now and again, but not very often. If you're doing something a little bit different, like this head knife, if you can see it, not really suited to a jig. Freehand grinding is what I normally do now, and the reason for that is there's a lot of, I can put what I want on it, I can remove where I want, and I'm not restricted by a jig. What I will use, and what I do use, is a file guide of some description, just to get my plunge lines, get them straight and even and everything else. But you might have noted too, on my steak knives I blend in the plunge lines, I don't have them, and I do that a little bit more now on my kitchen knives, which again you can't do on a jig. So really, I guess it comes down to personal preference. If a jig works for you, use it. If freehand grinding works for you, use that as well. If you're going to get into making knives, you want to be good at both, I guess. So again, practice and keep on practicing. Get a scrap piece of mild steel or anything really and just do it. You learn by doing. Well, I do anyway, so that's what I do. So I hope you've enjoyed that little video, and if you've got to this far, thanks so much for watching, and to all those people who subscribe, thank you so much, because that really helps me in a lot of ways. So yeah, I hope you enjoy your day and this video finds you in good health. Thanks again.